Sorry, has my mic been off all this time? Mhm.
Hello and welcome to York Observatory's monthly TeleTube broadcast, the online astronomy and astrophysics program written and presented by the students, faculty, alumni, and friends of York University. We are broadcasting live from the Alan I. Carswell Observatory located at York University in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. York TeleTube broadcasts every last Friday of the month at 7:30 p.m. local Toronto time right here on our YouTube channel. For any questions or comments you have about our past shows, or if you have suggestions for future topics, please send us an email at observe@yorku.ca. You can always connect with us on Instagram at our handle YorkU Observatory. We would like to inform you about the Summer 2026 Astronomer in Residence program. This program is a collaboration of the Alan I. Carswell Observatory with Killarney Provincial Park to host astronomers in the certified dark sky site of Killarney, to lead in-person presentations and shows using the park's observatory. To learn more about the program, visit our website at yorku.ca/science/observatory/AIR.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Zach, and I'm here alongside Arthana, Athena, Shreya, and Poria from the Alan I. Carswell Observatory at York University. We're excited to welcome you tonight and are pleased to host our guest speaker, Paul Mackin, who will be diving into amateur observing. The observatory is located on our Kiel campus in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and we would like to welcome you all to show and acknowledge the traditional land on which it is located. The observatory acknowledges its presence on the traditional territory of many indigenous nations. The area known as Toronto has been caretaken by the Anishinaabeg, the Haudenosaunee, the Huron-Wendat, and the Métis. It is now home to many indigenous peoples. We acknowledge the current treaty holders, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, our stargazing and astronomical efforts to join the long history and current practices of astronomy for this land. The observatory looks forward to continuing to learn and help to revitalize our knowledge in this area.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Athena, and I'm going to talk about what's in the night sky tonight. Before we get started with the main show, here's a quick look at what you can see in the sky tonight. You'll notice Arcturus shining brightly towards the southeast. You can also spot Vega and Altair. These are two of the three stars that are located in the Summer Triangle, which are pattern stars that are visible in the northern hemisphere. The moon is in its waxing gibbous phase, about 98% illuminated. And for the planets tonight, Jupiter will be visible right after sunset located in the western sky. Venus will also appear after sunset and will stay visible for most of the night. All of these objects are visible to the naked eye, but if you have binoculars or a small telescope, you'll get an even better view. Happy observing.
Hi, my name is Shreya, and I'm going to give a speaker introduction. So, Paul Mackin is an amateur astronomer with nearly 60 years of experience exploring the night sky. A third-year astronomy and physics student at York University, Paul combines his background in entrepreneurship, engineering, and computer science with hands-on research in York's Electron Dipole Moment Lab. From building telescopes to inspiring curiosity about the universe, his passion for astronomy continues to shine.
Thank you so much. It's great to join you tonight. I'm just going to share my screen here. And it's that one. Okay, here we go. Hopefully you can all see my screen. Tonight, we are going to talk about basically telescopes. It can be a very confusing area to deal with. If you're an amateur and you want to understand telescopes, you can go to Walmart or you can go to Costco, and they've got telescopes there, and they tell you how many times they magnify and paint all these great pictures of how wonderful all the wonderful things you'll be able to see. A little more complicated than that. So I'd like to walk you through a bit of how telescopes actually work. So everyone's got this image of a telescope with a sort of a long tube with a lens at one end and an astronomer at the other. And light comes in, sent down by the lens to the eyepiece, and the astronomer can look at it. And, initially it was like that for quite a long time. But technology has moved things along, and the first telescopes worked on those principles. Those are called refractor telescopes, which I've highlighted here. But then this guy came along named Isaac Newton, who came up with a different idea. And I guess you could say it's all done with mirrors. He came up with the idea of a Newtonian telescope, in which case you've got the same open tube, but the light comes in and hits a concave mirror, which concentrates the light up to a second mirror, which bounces out the side of the tube, and the observer is there. And then, of course, further embellishments came along, and we got the Cassegrain, which now sends the light through a different kind of mirror, back down through a hole in the first mirror, and goes to the observer. Now, with any of these telescopes, you can simply take the observer away and put a camera in there. And that's one of the things we're going to talk about tonight. And these telescopes have different applications and different price points. So we're going to want to understand the basics of reflecting and refracting telescopes a bit. Now, the first rule is aperture. Okay? When you go to that store and they tell you 450 magnification, technically, you could probably get there, but magnification is not what you're looking for. High magnification in inexpensive scopes, those are hobby killers. You'll get the telescope, you'll try to use it once or twice, never get it to work, and it'll go into the closet or go to the next yard sale or whatever. That's not a great use of your money, and it's a way just to dampen any enthusiasm for astronomy. But talking about magnification, the rule of thumb is that for every 2.5 centimeters or 1 inch of aperture, you get kind of a maximum of 50 times, but you'll never use that because the goal here is not magnification. Telescopes are light buckets, which capture photons, little tiny packets of light, and you want as much light as possible from your scope, and it'll sort of get it to your eye or get it to a camera. And the wider the aperture not necessarily will, but can also give you a wider field of view. So you'll be able to see more of the sky, perhaps in a little less detail. So the second rule is the mount. A telescope on a flimsy mount is also a hobby killer because you'll have a hard time getting it to point even at something as bright and big as the moon, and it won't stay there. So modern telescopes are often what are called smart scopes. You tell them what you want to see and they'll get you there. But what you really need in a mount is stability and ease of use. Okay, you want this to be rock solid. When it's pointing at something, you want it to stay pointing there. And if it's tracking that something, you want it to track with the object. Now, there's another option, which is one of my favorite, which is called the Dobsonian mount. And this is, you can't do smart telescopes this way, really. But these are point and look. So you'll see a picture in a minute, but they're really great for looking at the moon and the planets and maybe some brighter deep space objects. So again, on Dobsonians and types of mount. So in the upper picture here, this is one of my telescopes, Dobsonian, and you can see that it's just, there's nothing electronic about it. You grab the scope with your hand, you point it at the object you want to look at, and it's got some alignment tools to help you do that. It's got a thing called a telerad, which lets you look at, not a finder scope, just something with a reticle that lets you see the object you want or that kind of neighborhood, and then you adjust it with your hand, and as the sky turns, you just sort of move it with your hand a little bit and stay tracking, and it's very natural, and you get used to it really quickly. These are, really easy to use and master, but you can't take pictures with them. Now, an azimuth mount, I don't have a picture of an azimuth mount here. They're not really useful for small manual telescopes, but they are the preferred approach for basic smart telescopes, and we'll talk about those in a minute. And then finally, there's an equatorial mount, and this is for more serious amateurs. This is, again, one of my scopes. We'll look at this in a minute. But this, if you see the way the letters AM5 go here, if we draw a line through the center of them, that's pointing at the North Celestial Pole. So the telescope is designed to rotate around that pole, which means that once an object is centered, you've got a small motor in here, the telescope will move to keep track of the object. Again, this is something that you get in more advanced scopes. If you're a beginner, this is maybe not where you want to go first. We'll look at that in a second. So the third rule ties to that. Where are you at in your telescope journey? Buy carefully. Telescopes are specialized, so do not go to Costco, Walmart, nothing. I shop at Costco and Walmart all the time. I just wouldn't buy a telescope there. I wouldn't buy a camera there either, right? The telescopes are specialized. Go to a telescope store, do your research online, try to figure out a budget. And if you don't have a budget, you don't know how much is that big particular piece of string, then go to a telescope store and tell them what you want and tell them what you can afford. And you know what? They will help you. They want repeat customers because once you get into telescopes, you have a tendency to come back for more. We'll talk about that a bit later too. So you have to think about what you want to look at. Do you just want to look at craters on the moon? Hey, great. Maybe a small Dobsonian telescope is exactly what you need. Oh, you want to take pictures of galaxies? Okay, but you don't have a lot of money? Well, maybe the smart telescope's the option. You want to, you want to join the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada and you want to publish pictures and you want to contribute to research, then you need to think about, a more complex setup and a bigger budget. The idea here is to plan for versatility. Down the road, you may want to look at other things. And then you should consider whether to go with an astrograph versus a telescope. They're both telescopes, but broadly speaking, an astrograph is something that you take pictures with as opposed to look through. So these are some of the decisions that you have to make. And hopefully some of the things we talk about today will help you start to think about that. So here are 3 telescopes. These are 3 of my scopes. I have an affinity for the letter B. So they are, from left to right, the Beast, which is really great for deep space observing. It's great for, it's got a very wide field of view. It's got lots of light gathering capability, but it was expensive. My wife is still complaining about how expensive it was, but I get a lot of great joy from that. And you'll see one of the pictures I've taken with it later today. The second one is the Bad Boy. Now, this is an older, inexpensive scope that I sort of upgraded, and I'm still in the middle of commissioning it. And it is good for the moon, for planets, and for some deep space objects. It's got high resolution, but a more limited field of view, and it's kind of a medium cost solution. And then down here, we've got the Baby, which is great for the moon and the sun. You need a sun shield for that, but it came with one. It's not really good for planets, but it's nice for galaxies and nebula, and it is amazingly inexpensive. And this is, often a very good starting spot for people who are interested in astronomy, but you can't look through it. You couldn't really look through the first one either. You could look through the second one if you put an eyepiece on it. So again, different scopes for different needs. Now, here's 3 pictures that were taken. This is on the top here. Oh, sorry, I gave it away. This is the top here, the North American Nebula. And down here is the Horsehead Nebula. So these are emission nebula. They're basically large clouds of gas in the sky, and they have stars behind them giving off light. This middle picture is, there's 2 galaxies on the left, and then there's a star cluster up here, and this is another star. This is another galaxy. The top 2 pictures were taken in a backyard near Toronto with light pollution and everything. The middle 4 were taken on a recent trip by me to the Caribbean. I did take all these pictures, and I took them with one of these scopes, and no big surprise here because I let it slip earlier, but I took it with the smallest of the scopes. It was taken with a very inexpensive smart telescope. And we'll talk more about what they can do in a moment. But this is a great starting position. Again, you cannot look through it, but you can take pictures with it. And it's intelligent, smart. You tell it what through your phone or through your tablet or through your computer, you tell it what you want to do. It will figure out where everything is, tell you what it can do and what it can't do, and will take the necessary pictures. If you want to look instead of just imaging, then the bucket, a light bucket, lower cost. You can get a large aperture telescope for not so much money. This is not usable for imaging, but it's great for the moon, planets, and deep space objects. And this is an important point, don't expect images as you see them in the books. People are often disappointed by what they see. To tell you a story about this, that we do sometimes astronomy nights, pop-up astronomy nights, and people take a look through the telescope, and they're very impressed with the moon. They're very impressed with Jupiter. They're pretty impressed with Saturn, not so much with Mars, and just about anything else you show them, they're less impressed. Why? Because they've got all these great coffee table books showing them all the wonderful things that you can see in the night sky, but those are done with very different techniques and technology. And so these are instruments that will get you into the area, but they're not going to give you the results that you will expect from a book where something was taken with the Hubble Space Telescope. This is a nice telescope to have. I've had this one for 20 years, and I use it when I want to look at something with my naked eye as opposed to take pictures of something. And it's extremely good for that. So, and again, not an expensive option. So what's the difference between the really expensive scope and the cheaper smart telescope? Well, here's at the top here is a picture that I took with the baby. Okay, the very inexpensive smart telescope. Here's the same picture, it's slightly differently tilted, taken with the Beast, the most expensive and best telescope I own. And you can see the difference. It's a great picture up top, but the stars are a bit bigger. It's not quite as clear. There's not as much detail. The colors aren't quite right. Now, the other thing about the first picture was I didn't have to do very much. I told the telescope I wanted to take this picture of this object, which is Messier 20, the Trifid Nebula, and it just went forth. It took a bunch of pictures, stacked them together, removed the noise, processed it, and I uploaded it to my computer. The bottom image, I spent 3 nights, 2 hours a night, taking this picture in 240-second cycles. So I take a 240-second exposure, then I take another 240-second exposure, and the telescope was tracking along with the object. And then I would go on my computer and I'd stack all those images together and run it through some image processing software called PixInsight. There's others, but that's one. And it was a huge amount of effort. And I could still fiddle with this and make it a little better if I wanted. But the bottom image is clearly superior, but someone's just starting out. You're going to get a really big thrill over capturing a picture like that yourself with a very small investment. So the bottom line, smart telescopes are inexpensive. They are high performance, they are low cost, they are simple to learn, and they give you room to grow. And I think that's a really important point. We're all used to using our phones, we're all used to using our tablets. Telescope technology has evolved in that direction as well. And now you can take advantage of that kind of technology with a smart telescope. And I would give you one final thought. There are 2 things in life that you cannot have too many of. One is telescopes, and the other one is ukuleles. And tonight we're talking about telescopes, but if you start on this journey and if you start to enjoy it, your first purchase will not be your last. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Paul.
I'm going to
Thank you
give
for
you
your
your screen
presentation,
back.
Paul.
Yeah, I'm going to give you your screen back here.
Yes.
I'm trying to, sorry, having a bit of technical difficulty here. Hang on.
Oh, no worries. I think
I'm
if
trying to,
you press stop share, it might work. It might switch over to my screen.
sorry, I'm not seeing it. Just a sec here. Oh, there it is.
It
Got
might
it.
be.
Got it.
Oh,
Okay.
there you go. Okay, so thank you so much for your presentation. Very insightful information for people getting into amateur observing. So my question for you is, what is your favorite discovery made by an amateur astronomer?
It's a great question. And of course, you've got a picture there of something that might qualify. That is an impact cloud where a comet hit Jupiter. And the comet was called Schumacher-Levy, named after Gene Shoemaker and David Levy. Now, technically, Levy was absolutely an amateur, and technically Schumacher was as well, but He really wasn't. He was a PhD in astrophysics. He helped design the training. In geophysics. He helped design the training program for the J class missions in the Apollo series, Apollo landing series, where the astronauts were trying to act as scientists on the moon and get various geological samples. So I thought about this one as a possibility, but I sort of have to come down on the side of not quite an amateur discovery. So my personal favorite is Comet Hyakutake, and it's for very personal reasons. So this was discovered in, excuse me, in January 1996, so 30 plus years ago, and it was called the Great Comet of 1996. It came very close to the Earth, and it was discovered by a Japanese gentleman named, I'll try to correct his name, Yuri Hyakutake. And he actually discovered it with a specialized pair of binoculars, very big binoculars, but he was a comet hunter. This is what he did. And my reason it's kind of my favorite is around this time, I was actually in Australia, and I was in a place called oh God, I was on Hastings Street in Noosa Head, Australia, and I was having dinner on the beach, and it got dark, and I looked up at the sky, and I could see this comet, and it was extremely bright, very visible, and I remember sitting there just thinking I was in the happiest place I'd been in a long time, just looking at that comet. So that is kind of my first personal favorite for very personal reasons. But amateur astronomers make a huge contribution to astronomy. Astronomy is one of the very few fields in science where amateurs routinely add to the body of knowledge and make new discoveries, particularly in the areas of comets and asteroids. And now, with instruments such as Vera Rubin coming online and all the data being made available to anyone, there's a lot of people who are just data mining and finding new discoveries, sometimes years after the fact, or the information was first captured. So there's a lot, but Hyakutake's got to be mine.
All right, thank you. I hope this gives some hope for people coming into amateur observing, and maybe they may make some new discoveries. But my next question is, so you were talking about ukuleles and telescopes, but why is it that you can't have too many ukuleles?
It's something I keep telling my wife every time I buy a new ukulele or a new telescope. But the story is this: about 25 years ago, maybe a little less, probably about 20 something years ago, when my sons, I have three kids, my two oldest, and then I have a daughter now, a younger age, but my sons were in primary school. One of their science teacher found out that I was an amateur astronomer and kept inviting me around every year with a bunch of my friends to bring a telescope, and we do some pop-up astronomy in the schoolyard, and it was a lot of fun. And it eventually evolved to the point where I was asked to come in and give some lectures, and I did that. And I was trying to find a way to get the kids more interested in astronomy. And I'm not really very talented musically, but I did hear someone play a Monty Python song, Always Look on the Bright Side of Life, on the ukulele, and I thought it was very charming. And I knew there was another Monty Python song called the Galaxy Song, which was written about the size and scale of the universe. And it's quite funny. It's a sweet little song. And so I decided that the next year I was going to do this. I was going to learn to play the ukulele, and I was going to play my ukulele and sing it to the kids. And these were young kids. These were, under 10. And I did it. I went out and got a ukulele, and I found a really good ukulele teacher. And I walked in with a copy of the song and said, I need to learn this, and that's all I want to learn on the ukulele. And he said, okay, well, we'll start. But by the time we got through that song, he'd introduced some other songs, and I learned a whole bunch of other songs on the ukulele. And then I decided that a single ukulele wasn't enough. You needed to get not just a concert ukulele, but you needed to get a tenor ukulele, and you needed a soprano ukulele, and you needed a travel ukulele. And before I knew it, I had five of them. And I've got four telescopes. I got five ukuleles, and I'm told I'm not allowed to buy any more, but you never know what will happen in the fullness of time. But you cannot have too many telescopes or too many ukuleles. I keep telling my wife that. She isn't believing me, but I hope.
I really love that story. Um, but thank you for answering my question. So I will pass off the next set of questions to Zach.
Well, Paul, thank you for your presentation. My first question is, how do you know how long to keep the shutter open, and is it a different amount of time for different objects?
Well, this is a technical question, Zach, and I'm not surprised that you're asking it. It's a very good technical question. So yes, it's absolutely dependent on a number of factors. It's dependent on the seeing conditions, the brightness of the object, the intrinsic brightness of the object, the dispersed brightness of the object, the overall brightness of the object, the amount of space, the area it covers in the night sky, your field of view, the light gathering capabilities of the telescope. So it's a very complicated calculation. If you're taking a picture of the moon, you're going to shoot your shutter is going to be open a really short time, 10th of a second, something like that. If you're shooting the Trifid Nebula that I shared that picture of, again, I opened the shutter for 240 seconds and I took 50 of those pictures and stacked them together. Planets would be closer to the moon, bright planets would be closer to the moon, and you would vary it. And you've also got to take into account the fact that I live in a suburb of Toronto, so my skies aren't great. If I was out in the country, I would have better skies, and maybe it would adjust the requirements for exposures. So it's something you learn. That being said, smart telescopes automate this for you. Again, and I am an advocate for smart telescopes for beginners. The baby takes 10-second exposures. If it is an object other than a planet, it'll take a 10-second exposure and it will keep taking 10-second exposures, and then it will put all those images together for you. So that's kind of the trick there. So it is different for different objects, but technology does to some degree come to the rescue. And you can also look things up online. Look up, I want to take an exposure of, just Google, I want to take an exposure of, M33. How long should I expose it? You might give you some parameters, it might ask for some parameters that you've got, like your telescope and the kind of camera, and AI is good for that too.
Okay, thank you so much. My next question is for if somebody is serious about this hobby, what should they spend the most money on for the most long-term gain?
I'd start with the mount. The mount is generally more expensive. The mount and the tripod combined can generally occupy a fair amount of the total cost. And you can go with a cheaper scope, with a really good scope on a terrible mount, not a good combination. A less good scope on a really good mount, a smart mount with some guiding capabilities, that's money well spent, and you can always upgrade the telescope later. And again, that being said, a smart telescope is sort of an on-ramp and off-ramp. You can buy it, it's not a lot of money. And then if you're happy with it, you might want to add a second scope. And then you're into, a series of decisions then. But if I were going to be serious about the hobby and wanted to start off on the best foot, I would invest my money in a solid smart mount and tripod.
Hi, Paul. My first question was, what's the most extraordinary object that you've ever seen through a telescope in a heavily light polluted area, and how did you actually find it?
Hmm. Um, well, I'm gonna. I'm not going to answer the question directly. I'm going to answer the question in a different way. Uh, what's the most extraordinary object I've ever seen in a heavily light polluted area, and how did I actually find it? I'll leave the telescope out because this was a visual observation thing. And I'll come back to the telescope in a second. But again, I was in Australia. I've been to Australia a couple of times, and I was in Sydney. I was attending a festival of lights. It's going on right now, actually, in Sydney. It's called Vivid. They run it every late May, June. And it's right near the Sydney Opera House, and the Royal Botanical Gardens is near there. And I was walking, very crowded, and I was walking through the Royal Botanical Gardens. And I looked up, and a lot of light pollution, but I could see some stars. And I saw this one very, very, very bright star. And I was trying, the skies are different in South America, in the Southern Hemisphere, rather. So I didn't know my way around. So I grabbed my phone, and there was an app by the European Space Agency at the time, I think it still exists, that I could quickly bring up and sort of try to figure out what it was. But the app was quite good. You could point it at the sky, and it would try to figure out directionally what you were looking at and the angle and whatnot. And what I'd actually seen was Alpha Centauri, which is the closest star to Earth. And I didn't have a telescope with me. But a few days later, um, I did. I was back at Noosa Head, and the skies are much darker there. And I had a camera with a good telephoto lens, and I was able to use that as sort of a makeshift telescope. And Alpha Centauri is actually, it's three stars, but the main one that you see when you look at it visually is two stars very close together, and it was able to split the binary. It was able to resolve the two stars separately. So to me, that was totally fascinating. And I was looking at something, when you look at some object in the night sky, the light's coming to you from 2 million years or 2 million years ago or whatever. That was 4.5 years ago. So that light I was seeing was only 4.5 years old, and I just found that fascinating. So that was kind of an extraordinary moment for me.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I also had another question. It's a little similar. What's a celestial object that looks better through a small telescope than through a giant expensive one?
The picture you've got right there, Andromeda. Andromeda is great in binoculars if you've got dark skies. It's great in a small wide angle telescope. It looks quite good in my Dobsonian. The smart telescopes have to take multiple pictures and assemble them together. My biggest scope can do a great picture of it, but it will take days, and I'll have to divide it up into sections and take multiple exposures and so on. So Andromeda is just a great object to look through, honestly, with binoculars if you're out in the country, or a small telescope, particularly a wide angle telescope, because you can make out the core of the galaxy, you can make out one of the sister galaxies and so on that are orbiting it. That's really just a great little object to look at. Little object. It's a galaxy bigger than ours. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Perfect. Thank you.
Hi, Paul. That was a very intriguing presentation. And I guess my question for you is, what are the best places to buy telescopes and or telescope equipment for amateur observing that offer both long-term quality and a good value for the price?
Well, as I said, do not buy these at a general store. These are like, at a sort of a box store. Telescopes are specialized pieces of equipment, and you need to buy them from someone who knows about telescopes. So there are specialized telescope stores. I'm not here to advertise for anyone, but I will list two that I know of in the Greater Toronto area: Conscope Center in Toronto and Ontario Telescopes in Bolton, not terribly far from Toronto. And I bought from both of them. And the staff is knowledgeable. They can answer questions. They are, sure, they want to sell you something, but they're looking for that person who they know is going to keep coming back for new gear, because it is a lifelong hobby. So they want you to be happy with them. They will give you good advice. They will not try to sell you the wrong thing. And the prices are relatively competitive across all. The other thing that I would say is some of this stuff is available on the online stores like Amazon and whatnot. I don't know that that's more price effective or not, but again, you don't have that experience of talking to people and learning things. So I would say look for a specialized telescope store and talk to the people who work there. Also, of course, you can do your own research online, but again, when it comes to buying it, I would go to a specialized store.
Right, that makes sense. And I guess my next question for you is that, after they buy their own telescopes, have a setup in their backyard, what are some good websites or apps that provide detailed telescope observing, including like celestial objects, information, things that are visible in the night sky, and just guided observing recommendations for amateur astronomers?
Sure. There's, there's tons of websites, of course, and there's a lot of tools, and there's TV shows and there's radio shows that you can listen to on the sky at night. BBC has a regular column called The Sky at Night. The space.com usually has some information about things you can look at. But an application that I use a great deal, in fact, I think everyone in the astronomy program at York is likely to use it, and it's free, is Stellarium. It's available as a phone app, an iPad or Android app, and a website. And you just simply go in. If your computer's set up properly, it will know your latitude and longitude, so it'll know the time of day for you. You can tell it to show you the constellations. You can tell it to show you where the planets are, where all the deep space objects are, and so on. And very, very helpful. But coming back to the theme of smart telescopes, the smart telescopes come with apps. So if I want to look at something, and I don't really know, supposing I were to, it looks like it's going to be clear tonight, and if I were to take my little telescope out back, and I have no predisposition to observing anything, let's say, I can just say to the scope, what's best? And it will give me a list of the objects that are best right now. And then I can tell it to take and it'll show me a little picture of them. And if I click on the picture, it'll tell me something about it, and I can take a picture. So it's a good general introduction and education tool. It will also tell you if an object, you want to go out and you want to look at Andromeda. Well, now's not a good time to look at Andromeda. It's kind of below the horizon. So it will tell you, no, you can't look at Andromeda right now. It's not visible, but it will be visible around 4 o'clock in the morning. And you can program it to take a picture at that time if you want. So, the software is very, very good, but I really like Stellarium. I use it all the time.
Right. Thank you so much. I think that's a great starter pack, the website and the tip on where to get your first telescope. Thank you so much, Paul.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Paul, for your amazing talk, and I really enjoyed it. So I had a question actually. Has it ever happened that a plane or satellite photobombed your images?
Planes once in a while. Satellites, if I'm imaging, I usually image all night. Again, the telescopes are pretty sophisticated, so you can tell them what you want to take a picture of, or a series of pictures. And I'll usually try for 3 objects a night, and maybe shoot, maybe shoot 100 frames. And 10 to 15% of them have satellites in them. There's a lot of satellites in the sky, and that's before the constellations of things like Starlink and other satellites got launched. So yeah, it happens all the time. Now the good news is that unless it's like a plane or maybe the ISS, the International Space Station, uh, the imaging software is usually smart enough to figure out that it's a satellite going by, and when you're doing your final processing, it can remove it. But it's it's extremely commonplace. In fact, it's far more. It used to be when I first got into this, that if you went outside in a dark night in the country, you could expect to see 7 meteors an hour if it wasn't a meteor storm. Now, if you go out in the same circumstances, you're going to see a dozen or more satellites and your 7 meteors. So it's a very common thing.
Interesting. Thank you so much. And my next question is, when you look at an object through a telescope, why do celestial objects look less impressive than the images you see in astronomy books?
Yeah, I call this the R problem or the RT problem. I used to have a colleague, we'll give him his initials RT. And one time I invited him over to look through a telescope at my house, and it was in the middle of the city of Toronto. And he was singularly unimpressed. He looked at the moon, and that was sort of cool. And then I showed him, I think, M13, which is the globular cluster in Hercules, and he was really unimpressed. So I said, "Well, look, invite me to your cottage, and I'll bring the telescope, and we'll do that." And same story, singularly unimpressed. And there's a reason for that, because people look at books and they think that everything every time they look through a telescope, it's going to be exactly what they see in these books. Now, these images in the books are taken by billion-dollar telescopes in orbit, or really, half-trillion-dollar telescopes on the ground, and with imaging software and supercomputing capabilities. But but it comes down to a fundamental thing here. The human eye is 5 millimeters across. The part that the light goes into your eye, your pupil, is about 5 millimeters across. And remember, I said aperture is everything in a telescope? That's your aperture of your eye. You can't get a lot of light into your eye. So, and not only that, the exposure you take, coming back to Zach's question, is about a 20th of a second. So you've got a very small aperture and a very fast exposure, which means you're not collecting a lot of light. And then it's got to be processed by your brain. So even coming in through a telescope, there's not a lot of, you're not capturing enough light to get that detailed image. So this is where photography comes in. With photography, astrophotography, but before that with plate and film photography, you can capture a lot of those photons, and then you can start to process it to extract detail. And that's the reason, why people are often disappointed when they look through a telescope. And that's why I think I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I've sort of got religion on this. That's why I think that smart telescopes are a great entry. They're very inexpensive, and they will give you images that will surprise you with the quality that they can produce very easily. So it's a great entry point into sort of the amateur astronomer ecosystem.
Thanks so much, Paul, and for your talk today. So,
My pleasure.
thanks so much, Paul. So, you have been listening to the Alani Carswell Observatory's monthly TeleTube broadcast, brought to you by the Astronomy and Astrophysics program, which has been written and presented by the students, faculty, alumni, and friends of York University. The hosts this evening were Arthana, Zachary, Athena, Shreya, and Purya. All of our programs are free, but if you would like to donate, see our website at yorku.ca/science/observatory/. You can always connect with us on PixelFed with the handle at York Observatory and check out our website for show notes, content, updates, and contact info. Make sure to leave any comments or questions in the comment section or live chat. We will be around for the next 2 to 3 minutes to answer your questions. Thank you for tuning in, clear skies, and have a good night.